Tariffs, trade wars, economic chaos, and the ever-present threat of hyperinflation. All of these are symptoms of the imminent unwinding of the post-World War II economic order. Today, we dive into the monumental restructuring of the global monetary system and what it means for the world's only global, neutral, and fixed supply asset. Plus, Trump announces the creation of the first ever US sovereign wealth fund, headed by the guy that has hundreds of millions of dollars of exposure to Bitcoin. It doesn't take a genius to predict what happens next. The great trade war of 2025 started and ended all within one day yesterday. Trump announced immediate 25% trade tariffs on the US's two closest geographic allies, Mexico and Canada, on Friday, which caused crypto markets to absolutely tank over the weekend and Bitcoin to drop about 10%. Broader markets reacted early Monday with similar-sized downturns, but the panic was short-lived as leaders of both countries were able to come to terms with President Trump later in the day, and the tariffs were put on hold for 30 days. Bitcoin then gave us the God candle none of us asked for as it quickly rebounded back up 10% within hours. Quick note here, Bitcoin was worth $10,000 per coin just 5 years ago, and today it moves up by $10,000 within hours. That's some remarkable growth. In hindsight, this was clearly a very effective negotiation tactic from President Trump, who was able to secure immediate and widespread border reinforcement from both countries to stop the flow of deadly drugs into the US. Whether the threat of tariffs and escalating trade wars has been completely avoided is unclear, but I would suspect that this has just delayed the inevitable. Trump has stated many times publicly that he feels the US is getting ripped off on the global stage in terms of the increasing levels of trade deficits the country has shouldered over the last several decades. And this reality comes largely as a result of the US dollar acting as the world reserve currency. This is where the Triffin Dilemma comes in. The Triffin Dilemma is a concept in international economics that describes the inherent conflict between a country's national economic interests and its role as the issuer of the global reserve currency. As the issuer of the current global reserve currency, the US must run deficits to supply the world with dollars. But doing this hollows out the domestic economy, forcing the US to import more than it exports. The global demand for dollars keeps the dollar artificially strong, making US goods less competitive and pushing manufacturing overseas. Since the US dollar was made the world reserve currency following World War II, the system has worked well and created tons of economic growth and prosperity globally. But now, cracks have appeared. As global debt levels soar and the increasing US trade deficit hollows out the manufacturing base, the whole system is being called into question. So the Trump admin, through tariffs, are trying to reshore production in America and weaken the dollar, as a weaker US dollar makes US exports cheaper and more attractive. Trump may also be attempting to force the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates faster. Trump has publicly said many times he thinks interest rates should go down faster. And so these tariffs could be an attempt to force the Fed's hand through market uncertainty. Meanwhile, countries around the world no longer want to rely on the US dollar for global trade. The BRICS nations are exploring alternatives and are actively selling US treasuries and reducing their dollar reserves. It's looking more and more like the post-World War II economic order is crumbling, and that we're inevitably headed back towards a neutral reserve currency system, like we previously had with gold. And this is all happening as Bitcoin is undergoing a rapid transformation into a cornerstone of financial infrastructure. This shift is driven by regulatory changes, institutional adoption, and growing recognition of Bitcoin as a superior form of collateral to US Treasuries. US Treasuries have inflation risk, duration risk, and counterparty risk. Bitcoin, in contrast, is liquid 24/7, instantly verifiable, totally scarce, and free from counterparty risk. Bitcoin solves the age-old Triffin Dilemma, and it's just a matter of time before nation-states around the world understand this. And as far as its positioning in the financial system, Bitcoin continues to distance itself from speculative assets like altcoins. The gap between Bitcoin and the broader crypto market is widening, with Bitcoin attracting institutional and sovereign investment while altcoins remain speculative. The Bitcoin ETFs, fair accounting rules, and bank custody rights are positioning it as a monetary base layer rather than a speculative bet. Just look at this chart showing asset performance versus Bitcoin in the past 2 years. In the last 2 years, the Nasdaq is down 62% against Bitcoin. Ethereum, the second biggest crypto, is down 63%. The S&P 500, down 68%. Gold, down 70%. And long-term US Treasuries are down a whopping 82%. Bitcoin has clearly already separated itself from the pack. The question is, are you paying attention yet? So Bitcoin's adoption curve is accelerating due to financial system integration. As institutions, corporations, and sovereign entities realize they need Bitcoin, a supply shock is imminent. The risk is no longer holding Bitcoin. The real risk is not holding any at all. And nations around the world are beginning to get it. Take a look at this graphic showing the international race that is underway for a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Several nations are well on their way to enacting a law to acquire Bitcoin as part of their reserves. So, reminder, it's not too late to front-run nation states. And you can do that with Swan. Visit swan.com or download the app by searching for Swan Bitcoin in the App Store. Swan has the fastest onboarding experience in the industry. You go from sign up to buying real Bitcoin within minutes. And don't forget to sign up for our newly announced Swan Card. The Swan Card is the Bitcoin Rewards credit card that lets you effortlessly build your legacy as you live your life. Your Bitcoin rewards automatically appear in your Swan account. Sign up for priority access at swan.com/card and secure your spot in line as we get closer to launch. And are you looking at Bitcoin and not getting advice from your financial advisor? Then Swan Private is for you. The Swan Private team helps high net worth individuals, family offices, businesses, and trusts understand Bitcoin and capture its significant upside. From retirement accounts and tax loss harvesting to inheritance and estate planning, Swan Private helps you take control of your financial future. Visit swan.com/private to meet with a member of the team today. And a quick shout out to Mara, the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner, for supporting this show and for helping make Bitcoin the world's most decentralized and secure monetary network. Okay, one more piece of news, and it's right on cue with what we've just talked about. Yesterday, Trump signed an executive order calling for the creation of the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund. And who does he have leading the fund? His new Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Lutnick is a very public proponent of Bitcoin, even admitting in this interview that he holds hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin exposure.
I have hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars exposure to Bitcoin. And it will be billions.
I was going to say, so next year when you come back and we'll do this again and you'll be a Bitcoin billionaire.
Every time Bitcoin dips, I'm going to be the buyer. What you're going to see is Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be the sponsor of Bitcoin into traditional finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will be the leader of it. And I'll pull out this podcast in years to come and say, see, I told you, because no one's going to remember.
Of course.
Right. But all the banks, after we do it and show people how to do it right, they'll all copy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the asset of Bitcoin will just, as it becomes more accepted, it will become more valuable.
Again, that's the guy that is running the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. Lutnick is also the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, and he announced at the Bitcoin 2024 conference that his bank is launching a $2 billion Bitcoin financing and lending business that would use Bitcoin as collateral for USD loans.
Cantor Fitzgerald is here to announce that we are launching a Bitcoin financing business. We will offer leverage to those who own Bitcoin. We are going to launch with $2 billion of lending. And once we put out the $2 billion of lending, we will go up in increments of $2 billion. You have to realize Cantor and BGC, its largest wholesaler, we finance and arrange vast amounts. And we are going to now build that ecosystem for Bitcoin. So the moral of the story is we are going to welcome Bitcoin into the financing family of the global financial markets, and Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be your sponsor.
Senator Cynthia Lummis, who authored the famous Bitcoin bill that calls for the U.S. Treasury to buy 1 million Bitcoin as part of a strategic reserve, tweeted this on the news of the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund creation. This is a big deal. Notice the Bitcoin symbol and the B on big. So in summary, Bitcoin's reclassification from a high-risk asset to a financial cornerstone is happening in real time. The gradual phase of Bitcoin's monetization is over. We are now entering the suddenly phase, where institutions must race to accumulate Bitcoin before their competitors do. Meanwhile, the post-World War II monetary order is rapidly changing, and Bitcoin is poised to take the throne as a far superior global reserve currency by solving for the Triffin Dilemma by aligning with the principles of a neutral global reserve asset without the drawbacks of the fiat-based system where the world is at the whims of any one country. So who knows how all of this will play out, but one thing is for sure, the next few years will be anything but boring. So secure your Bitcoin in cold storage, sleep easy, and enjoy the fireworks. That's it for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends, and subscribe to the Swan Bitcoin channel for more high-signal Bitcoin content. Thanks for watching, and remember, TikTok next block.